What's up, y'all? Alright, so the long-awaited video that I've been promising in the last several videos has finally arrived. Big changes. The nutshell version is I'm not car hauling anymore. I have gone back to my paramedicing job. I'm sitting at the ambulance service right now that's a part-time job for me. Do have a full-time job at home in my home county. Now, me being the nice guy that I am, I've got to warn you, this video is a little bit longer than normal. So if you have the attention span of a 3-year-old, now would be a good time to click off and go somewhere else, because you're not going to make it. But if you're curious as to what's going on and why I quit car hauling, stick around and I'll walk you through it. It's been a big mess. So, if you guys remember a while back when I took a short break from car hauling, it was at the request of one of my bosses. He and some new business partners of his had started a new venture. And they needed some management assistance, crew leader type stuff, and they asked me if I would be interested because of my background in construction. And it wouldn't have been something that was particularly of interest to me, but I consider my boss to be a friend, and we've always worked really well together over the past 4 years. And he asked if I would be willing to help him out with it, and I said sure. So Paperwork Princess and I took off, and we worked in Ohio, and we worked over in Chicago, and we worked some down in Tennessee. We were installing appliances for Lowe's and Home Depot with the idea that we would expand into multiple teams, multiple crews in multiple cities, and we would be overseeing those different crews. Well, it didn't take long for us to figure out that the people that we were working with, well, let's just put it this way, their moral, ethical business compass pointed exactly the opposite direction of ours. And you guys have been watching my videos long enough to have formed an opinion about where I stand on how to treat people in business and things like that. So I realized very quickly that I could not hire someone and tell them the things that I was told to tell them in order to hire them when those things were not true. I didn't know it wasn't true initially, but I found out that there were multiple promises being made with absolutely no effort and likely no intention of ever keeping those promises. Found that out from personal experiences, from promises that were made to me and to the Paperwork Princess that were never kept, intentionally never kept. And they even went so far as to brag about the fact they had never intended to keep those promises after they had us hired. And they involved the level of pay that we had been promised. So when you promise somebody $10 and you pay them less than half that, and then you tell them that that's your intention, well, that'll give you an idea right there which direction their moral, ethical compass pointed. So, long story short, I realized very quickly that this was not the type of business, specifically the type of people that I had any interest in being involved in long term. So I went back to car hauling, and my boss understood. So I became an owner-operator in the Mothership. And the understanding was that I was responsible for all maintenance and damages that occurred. We had it all in writing, not as an official contract. This was a gentleman's agreement between friends, but we had emails and texts back and forth where we had a very clear understanding, and we had a functional meeting of the minds with regular settlements that showed me functioning as an owner-operator. I had receipts from where I was purchasing parts and repairs and things of that nature for the truck. So it was a very, very clear understanding. Well, 6 weeks in, guess who shows up? The same guys that I had just left bought into D-Line Logistics to a point where they had a controlling interest in the company. And they put their enforcer, their little pit bull, into the office in charge of daily operations. Now, if you've been following this channel long enough, you know that I was titled as the general manager of the car hauling division of D-Line Logistics, because before me that division did not exist. It was myself and my boss who began building that division, and we went from no trucks up to 5 trucks. And of course, it's always hard to find good hard workers in any business. Car hauling is no exception. There's a lot of lazy drivers out there, a lot of drivers without a lot of common sense. So we had a real difficult time getting beyond that point. But here's what happened. Like I said, within 6 weeks of switching over to car hauling, the guys from the other company that I had been working with came over and took over D-Line Logistics as far as the functional daily operations went. And they started making all sorts of plans and decisions and changes without one single time calling or texting me asking, hey, how would this affect car hauling? How will that work? And these people have zero experience in the transportation industry. They just have business experience. So they started making some decisions that I was hearing about behind the scenes that some loyal people were passing on to me that I knew was not going to be good for the business. But I waited and watched to see what would happen. During this time, if you guys remember the wreck video where I got backed into twice in the same night in the same parking lot by 2 different drivers, one on my driver's side, one on my passenger side, that was just another damage that occurred to the truck. And since I got insurance information on both those drivers, me being an owner-operator, me being clearly responsible for any damages or mechanical failures that occur to that truck during my tenure as an owner-operator, this was no different. I spoke with the office. Now this occurred just before the new guys bought in and took over. So I had a very clear understanding that I would be the one to negotiate with the insurance companies, that I would be the one doing as much of the repairs as I chose to do as long as the truck was put back together. And so I was offered about $7,000 for all of that damage, and I laughed at him. I said, that's ridiculous. That's not going to cut it. I can't take it to any body shop and get those repairs done. The hood by itself is $2,500 average cost out there on the street, from remanufactured hoods to used hoods. A brand new hood's a bit more than that. It's a used truck, nothing wrong with a used hood as long as it's in good shape. So I told both insurance companies they could go pound sand. And when it was all said and done, I had twice as much money out of the combined damage claims in order to do the repairs. When I was finished negotiating, the amount of money that came in matched the estimates that I had received, and some downtime money, because hey, it costs you money when you're down, and an insurance's legal obligation is to return you to your pre-loss condition. That's an important term. to remember that when you're negotiating with an insurance company, because if they're not returning you to your pre-loss condition, they're not doing their job. Which means if you're a commercial driver and your truck is down for a week or two in the shop, you're losing money. It's not just about the cost of the repair, it's about the cost to your finances caused by the driver that hit you. Now, I have no interest in suing those drivers. They're hardworking guys, just like me. I am not the kind of slime ball that goes around out there suing people just because there's an opportunity. I negotiated with insurance companies. We had a fair settlement without even a threat of bringing in attorneys. Insurance companies and their third-party, I forget what they called them, but almost like an adjuster, somebody that goes over the damages, looks at the photographs, maybe looks at the truck. They submitted their input, and all of us agreed that the amount of money they sent me was a fair amount of money. So, according to our agreement, D-Line sent the money to me, and I made arrangements to do the repairs. I started purchasing materials, as you'll see here in a few minutes, and this was about the time where these other folks came in and got involved. Now, as soon as I knew they got involved, I said, all right, there's going to be some more trouble here. And I was set for about a 4-year contract to buy my truck and trailer. Well, during one particular phone call discussion with their little enforcer guy, he told me that my contract with D-Line as an owner-operator was, quote, jacked, and it would not continue, quote. And that we were going to renegotiate the contract. Now, I had a fair market value agreement with D-Line Logistics. It was fair. Both of us would make money. Any deal worth getting involved in is only worth it to me. Again, this is just because of the duration of my moral compass points. If it's a good deal for both parties. Now, I had already watched these other guys renegotiate more than once, and never, ever was it a fair renegotiation. It always was in their favor. Big time. So I knew what was getting ready to happen, and because I had made an arrangement with friends, I had no written contract per se to fall back on, just to simplify the argument. Now, the term meeting of minds is a legal recognized term in a courtroom. And we had a meeting of the minds, plus settlement statements proving I was functioning as an owner-operator, showing what our numbers were, plus the multiple text messages and emails back and forth where we had worked our agreement out. So any decent attorney would be able to take that and show that it's a functioning contract. In fact, sometimes the fact that you have a history and you've had a history of that agreement functioning can be a stronger, better contract legally than just a piece of paper with signatures on it when there's been zero history to back that up. So I wasn't real concerned about it from that perspective, although I will tell you it is always a good idea, even when dealing with friends that you trust, to write it down and get it signed. It's just a good idea. And we were going to do that, but I had only been there for 6 weeks, and these are people I have been working with for years, so we just hadn't made it to the point of getting it all written down and signed. So they called me, and he told me very clearly that I'm still responsible for all the damages and all of the breakdowns for my truck, except for the one that involves some money, because they figured that they could get the truck repaired for less money than the total amount sent. Well, of course they could, because there was built-in downtime for those numbers. So they saw the chance to make and keep some money, but they still wanted me to be responsible for any other damages. The way I looked at it, this was just another damage. Whether I'm the one that ran into a light pole or somebody else backed into me, this is just another damage that occurred, and therefore it is still under my tenure as an owner-operator, my responsibility. And if I can do those repairs for a little bit less because I have the skill to do it, and I can pocket some of that money to help cover my lost revenue downtime, then so be it. that's to my benefit. I'm the one making payments on the truck and the trailer. So they didn't pay me for the last 2 months that I worked there because I had already received those funds. Now, I had people say, well, if they're not paying you should just drive away and just drop the truck off and leave. But I hadn't done the repairs yet. And again, because of the direction that my moral compass points, I was raised that your word is your bond. That when you tell somebody you're going to do something, that you stick with it and you do it, if it is humanly possible. And I knew that it was possible for me to do that. Now, I had already made the decision I was turning the truck back in. I was not going to go through a forced renegotiation. I just wasn't going to fight it. I didn't want to work somewhere where I knew I was constantly having to watch my back because somebody was trying to take advantage of me. I've been watching the way these guys did business. I knew what they were planning on doing because, again, I had people who were loyal friends that were filling me in about all the plans from behind the scenes they didn't think I knew about. So I had decided it was just in my best interest to turn the truck back in. Plus, at the same time, there was a lot of other factors that I'm not going to go into that I realized it was time for me to go back home. I miss my family. I'd never intended to be a long-term professional truck driver, never intended to retire from it. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Much respect to the guys that do it for a lifetime or even a short time, because the sacrifice of being away from your family, it's tough. My wife and I have been married for 28 years, and we knew that this was something that was going to help us attain the goals that we had. I was able to pay off some bills. Car hauling was really good to us. There's good money in it. But I was ready to be home. And I decided that with the dirty dealings from these other guys, along with a number of other factors, that I was ready to call it quits. We are still providing a dispatch service, technical support, all of that stuff. We're just not doing car hauling myself as a driver. So I began purchasing parts, and here's the story on that. There she goes, guys. Paperwork Princess has almost everything off except for the lettering on the top on this side. And then she goes to the other side. All right, I know you're thinking, what in the world is that? So I'm gonna tell you.
I'm not a fat. Just kidding.
Where this sidewall was a little bit pushed in, you can see right where my fingernail's there and right there. Basically where those two tree lines are, reflections, is where I've got it bowed out. Those marks are where the studs are in the wall, and it has regular bat insulation in behind it. And because that's nothing but a fiberglass sheet about 1/4 inch thick, when it was pushed in, it just bent the fiberglass a little bit. There's nothing really wrong with it, it's just a little bit bent. So I needed a way of pushing it back out. So what I've done is I screwed the chain to the wall. I put all these little ratchet straps on it, set the backhoe up as an attachment point, and I pulled it to where it's bowed out the opposite direction. Then, as you can see, expanding foam, and so on and so forth all the way up through there. I drilled little holes, and I pushed all the way in through the fiberglass bats and filled a pocket of expanding foam. When it dries, there's gonna be a little bit of bat behind it. Then I'll release the tension on those ratchet straps, and if it's still bowed out a little bit, I can just take my fist and kind of pound on it a little bit, flatten out those little horizontal pedestals of expanding foam, and I should have a nice straight wall. At least that's the big idea. Sarah's over there already working on sanding the wall down, getting it ready for paint. So anyway, I hope that works. Some of the rivets have been coming out. We've already replaced the one up there on top. Now Paperwork Princess is getting ready to do the next one. And there you have it. Nicely put back together. This hinge is coming apart. Up there on the top too. So there's several little repairs like that that we're doing before returning the truck. Got the side of the truck straightened out. Got all the little holes bondoed where I put fasteners in there to pull the side out. Got the 2 streaks fiberglass and then bondoed where the truck hit me. The 2 scratches up there sanded out nicely. Now all I gotta do is finish sanding it, mask it off, and spray it. Okay, guys, so here's what's up. Front yard project. Been working on this for a couple days now, getting it sanded, getting the body work done. You can see where I was sideswiped here. Beautifully smooth, can't feel it. You can see the little holes up through there where I have filled those. Cannot feel it with my finger. Wouldn't even be able to find it if I was blind. Anyway, that's where we anchored and pulled the wall back out. As you can see, we've got everything taped off. We're going to go ahead and spray the air dam up there over the cab because it was clear coat was peeling really bad. Got it sanded down. You can see where the little bit of clear coat was left. I don't want to shoot that with the base coat because the base coat's still in good shape and the stuff's super expensive, but I am going to blend it to cover where the clear coat is. But it's sanded and prepped. Same thing on the air dam up on top. The clear coat was peeling bad and was just looking really bad, as well as all the way along the top edge there. That was not involved in the wreck, but it was clear coat was peeling. So I'm going to paint the entire side and we're going to blend it in the last foot or so right here as it rounds the corner, just in case there's a slight variation in color due to fade and age and mix. At any rate, tomorrow we'll be doing the spraying. I may break out the gun and do a little bit of primer work tonight to cover those spots and then seal it and shoot it tomorrow. But long day and it's starting to look good. Ooh, she's naked. Paperwork Princess is taking off the glue from the lettering. Got the primer on over the areas that needed it. It's already flashed and that's smooth. I like that. Do a light sanding to that in the morning and hit it with some sealer, and then we'll be ready to shoot the base coat. What I have in here is clear base, because right here is where I'm blending it. I'm going to lay a wet bed for the blend to come into so there's none of that sandpapery feel. We put the base coat down, we're going to have a clear coat on the top, and nice and smooth. There's first coat. Actually came out pretty nice. Look at this. Not the slightest bit of orange peel. Absolutely gorgeous. Y'all, first coat is on. Actually, second coat is on. Waiting for it to flash, and then I'm going to go back and pick a few stray bugs out, touch up as needed, and it'll be ready for clear coat. And I think that color is going to blend absolutely beautifully Of course, it never looks quite the same when it's just the base coat. Got to wait till the clear coat's on it, but you can't hardly tell where it blends from one color into the other right there. Especially with the shadow that'll be in that division right there between the cab and the sleeper. So far, so good. And that up there blended out really nicely. Really, really nicely. All it needs is clear coat now. Well guys, paint is on. Letting it dry. And I'm going to buff it just a little bit, take out any little boogers in it. And get the hood put on. It is drying. But I think it's pretty obvious that color doesn't match that color. So the paint code was wrong, so we're going to have to scan that bumper corner. Paperwork Princess is on her way to paint shop right now, taking that with her. She's going to scan it, and then we'll try it again. Alright guys, we're going to leave the dish drainer. We bought it, but don't need it, so we're going to donate it. And as you can see, truck is nice and clean. Refrigerator's nice and clean. Latch it back. Freezer's nice and clean. Microwave is nice and clean. Bathroom is nice and clean. All the drawers and stuff are cleaned out. Truck's been cleaned inside and out. Here's some better after photos and some before to show you just how much better the truck looks after I did the extra work to it. From where the clear coat was peeling and just looked awful. And you can see here the reflection of the ladder in the new paint, and again in this one, and this is before there's even been any buffing done. In this photo here, this is actually on the way back up to Chicago. The gray sky is reflecting on the side of the truck. Here's before, you can see the peeling clear coat on the top, and here's another from the front side of that air dam. But you can see in the earlier videos how much better the entire truck looked. And I think it's really important when you have a good working relationship with someone and you respect them, it's important to go above and beyond to try to make sure that you're returning their truck in better condition than it was when you got it. And this truck is in far better condition than it was when I first picked it up from the dealership where the engine was rebuilt. There was just a lot of little things that I fixed. I didn't have to do any of that sanding and spraying. That paint is almost $600 a gallon. So I spent money out of my own pocket and a lot of time to do all of that extra work up on top of the truck just to make it look a lot better. So that leaves the question, what am I going to do now? Well, obviously, as I've already said, I've gone back to my paramedic job. I've been in emergency services for 22 years at this point. About 20 of those as a paramedic. So going back to EMS is a pretty easy thing to do. Psychologically, it was good to have a break. You see a lot of stuff in EMS, and I was also working as a coroner, doing death scene investigations for the last 9 years, and I enjoyed it. It was also time for me to take a break. Financially, I needed to do something different for a little while. It was healthy for me to take a little bit of time off, and I'm back and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. Feel good about my profession, my career as a paramedic. looking forward to spending more time in it. Still looking forward to helping guys get into car hauling if that's what you're interested in. Like I said earlier, we still have our dispatching company, and we're still going to be providing technical support, training, all of those things, just the same as we always have. We're just simply not driving. I will continue the channel, although it's going to be focused more around my little homestead, my little ranch. I'm going to be doing a lot of videos just showing how to do different things, like I just did with the painting on the truck. Spending the time to make sure that you have multiple talents and skills is one thing that will help ensure that in tough economic times that you are not unemployed or unemployable due to lack of training or education. You don't have to have a college degree, but just having skills. So we're going to spend a lot of time doing some videos showing we're doing some road building on the property, we're doing some fence building, we're caring for and milking a milk cow. I'm showing you how to make some homemade butter, how to care for that cow. We have chickens, fresh farm eggs, gardening projects, house building projects. I've never been able to finish my home, so now that I'm back home, my second job that I'm doing right now is just some project money. I no longer have to work 2 full-time jobs. My kids are grown. Like I said, car hauling was good for me. So we still have a few miscellaneous bills that I'm going to pay off, but this extra job that I'm doing now is just kind of a cleanup job and project money job. So I'm home a third of the month, which is far more than I was home when I was truck driving. So I'll be able to get a lot more done. And I hope that you guys that have been with me so far throughout this channel and this video, which I know is kind of long, will stick around and continue to drop your comments and questions about the different videos that I'll be putting up from the ranching side of life. And maybe even a little bit about what I do here in EMS rescue. Of course, I have to be careful about not violating any privileged information for patients, but that doesn't mean I can't show you a few pictures of what I'm doing. So you might also find me over on my little TikTok channel that I'm just having a little bit of fun with. Bones the Medic is the name of the channel, and I've already put up a few there, so come over and check it out. Anyway, I appreciate you guys sticking around to make it this far, and I hope that this explains a little bit more about why you haven't seen videos recently. I've been super busy transitioning from car hauling back into EMS and doing a bunch of projects at home. I already have some other video footage that I just haven't edited yet and put up about some of the projects we're doing at home. Hope to get to that here shortly. Hope you guys understand, and if you don't, that's okay too. But I thoroughly enjoyed car hauling. The business is still there even through this whole virus scare. I stayed basically loaded and busy. Our other trucks are still loaded and busy. Dispatch has to work a little harder to find good loads, but the loads are still out there. So y'all stick around. Thank you for the support on this channel. The Paperwork Princess and I really do appreciate it. You'll be seeing a little bit more of her too. She's still around, still working hard, still very supportive and good help. So thanks guys. See you on the next one.